Well, it's yet another Sunday afternoon. It's beautiful here in Buffalo. This is September 15th. It's finally 2 p.m. We have somewhat of an agenda today. Ingo is going to show us his KiloZed, which is if you imagine if you took a Timex Sinclair 1000 or a ZX81, and as the old SNL Nike sketch goes, you pumped it up a little bit, but it lasts longer than Thanksgiving. And so he's been working on this for years, I think, at least a year, maybe more. Making steady progress. So he's going to show us his progress. After that, I'll bring us all up to date on where the TS Pico stuff is at. Folks like Adam and Ryan and Francois have been helping beta test the software, and we've made breakthroughs thanks to their efforts. And the prior Sunday meeting, we had sort of started talking about how can we do a better job of preserving our history.
That was Monday. That was just this past Monday.
No. It was a Sunday meeting.
Oh, I guess at the end. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
August 18th. So we started talking about that. I've made some notes. I started making some spreadsheets. I assigned Adam a job.
You did? Oh,
yep.
Shoot.
You should be getting an email any minute now, Adam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the usual freewheeling craziness that we do. So with that, Ingo, are you ready to take over?
I'm ready. I'm ready to take over.
Okay. I am spotlighting you. It's all you.
And screen sharing is on.
Cool. And screen share
cool.
is on.
Okay.
Oh, now I'm nervous. I'm nervous.
The pressure is on, Ingo.
Oh no, this is gonna be on record no matter what I say or do.
This goes on your permanent record, yes.
There's so much on there already. Hey guys, been a while, and it's good to be here with everybody again. I don't know how long it's been since my last meeting. I've been so crazy busy lately. So first of all, my brother and I both have been working on the KiloZed. He's a massive contributor to this project. So the two of us have been playing with this thing. Yeah, it's been over a year now, maybe two. I actually have to look back and see how far back it goes. But yeah, so it all started with the keyboard. We wanted a mechanical keyboard instead of the membrane keyboard. So I started playing around with the keyboard. And then keyboard didn't fit in the original case, obviously. So we had to come up with a different case. And the case was sized just big enough to fit the keyboard. And let me switch to my other camera. You guys can kind of see what it looks like today. And I'm gonna have to turn off my virtual background because otherwise it just won't show anything. So there it is. So this is my brother did all the modeling in Pro Engineer and designed this thing and modeled it after the ZX81 case. And you guys have probably all seen it throughout its different incarnations. We went from a monobody to a split case with a top and bottom half back to a monobody. And but again, the main thing was just so the keyboard would fit. And then we came up with the name KiloZed because we actually have bigger ambitions for a full-size keyboard. That's going to be the Mega Zed, but figured, at least get the standard keyboard in there. So hence the KiloZed. And these are all mechanical key switches. They're actually hot swappable. So I can go over here and I can pull out an entire key switch. So you guys can see here. Here's a key switch. It actually has little ferrules inside that will clip the contacts. And I can just pop it back in. And there we go. So nice mechanical key switches. it's got the Traco power supply in it. Let me see if I just tilt my camera here. So you
Yep.
can see
That's
we've
a little
got
bit, okay.
power supply upgrade here. And I have some photos I could probably scroll through, it'll be a little bit better. But also this right here, this is just a proto board version, but this is a 32K RAM upgrade. So two different separate banks of the memory map, where I've got 16K in each for a total of 32. And we've added the heatsink of all heat sinks for the ULA to keep it cool. The newest additions are the ZX8CCV composite video mod, which is right here. And then the absolute newest addition is the ZX Westby. So we've got a Wi-Fi enabled file server that is also outputting VGA graphics. So we have well, I'll show the photos later, but so yeah, we've got VGA and composite out on this computer now. So taking inventory, we've got a mechanical keyboard, the switch mode power supply, 32K of RAM, a Wi-Fi enabled file server and file storage, 32K RAM, and a clean composite video signal, all in a nice little 3D printed package. I'm gonna switch to another camera here. Or actually, yeah, I think you guys might get a kick out of this. So this is the VGA output. I'm gonna turn on the computer. There we go.
Oh,
So what you guys are seeing is a screen capture device connected to the VGA output port. And I also have my composite monitor going at the same time. And so the cool thing about the Westby is all I have to do is type in the load command. I'm going to type load and then empty quotes. And when I hit enter, the Westby is going to tie into the load signal that normally would be reading from cassette tape. It's going to take over and it's going to load its bootloader into memory. And it's going to put up the screen. Now, the VGA capture device shows some goofy stuff that I don't actually see on a composite screen. But there we go. So now this is the loader screen from the Westby. And the ESP32 actually has a very simple web server running that I can access from my modern day computer that's on the same network. So you can see it's my router's assigned it a local IP address, 192.168.1.154. And I have one program that I created. So if you look on top there, that memcheck.p. If I type in 0, then it'll load that program. But before I do that, well, heck, let's do that first. I'm gonna hit 0. And it's done loading. So now if I hit list and enter, there's the memcheck program. This is how I confirm my 32K of RAM. And I can type run, enter. So there's the first 16K. It's basically just writing zeros to memory and then checking that the zeros are there. And so there's both banks of 16K that are available. And let's see, so I'm going to switch to browser here. So you guys can see the web server. Share my screen. And there we go. And let me zoom this in. Maybe you guys can see it better. So this is the ESP32 is actually running a very simple web server. And it shows a listing of the files that are currently on the WESP. And so right now there's just that memcheck file that we saw, the program that we saw earlier. And from here, this is where the cool connection is. I could download any number of .p files. In fact, somebody said, and I can't remember where I saw it, but they said that if you loaded the entire history of programs made for the ZX81, they would all fit on the WESP and still have room to spare. You can see it's got it's showing just under 900K of memory. But from here, so I can choose a file and then through this little upload link, add it to the WESP, and then from the WESP's interface, I can load it into memory and run it. So, you know, any games, anything like that.
Have you done it yet?
Yeah, so the first version I did was the what they call the minimally invasive version. There's an MI version, and that one just has a couple of wires, 2-3 wires, and like 3 resistors and a capacitor. And I did that one first. That one doesn't have the video output.
Okay.
And I did load some games. And as soon as I did that, I was like, okay, I need to do the VGA version because I wanted to be able to screen capture. And I also thought it'd be nice to have the option of having VGA output. So when I set up this other ESP, I didn't have time to load a bunch of stuff on it yet. So I won't be playing 3D Monster Maze.
Oh.
And what's the point, right?
Yeah, I know. Maybe a bit of a letdown, but
Bavarians are weird.
so hang on, let's see here. Show you guys some photos here. Give you a little bit of a better view of this thing. Start with this one. There we go. And okay. You guys can see this okay?
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
All right. So this is the ZX 8 CCB composite video mod.
Yeah.
Connected right here to the composite jack. And then from there, just this morning, I tied this in to my adapter board for the WESP. And this is just on proto board right now. That's a little close up. So I'm pulling the 5 volts DC, the video signal coming from the ULA.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
And
ask.
then my black wires are my grounds. And so I made it so I can completely disconnect the adapter board for the WESP. And then I also just mounted the VGA jack on the back. My brother's going to redesign the back so that we have the VGA jack, you know, sitting vertical instead of at an angle. It's at a goofy angle right now. Close up of that. There's the power switch. So we have an actual power switch in the back of the case, so you don't have to plug and unplug your power supply. And it's a barrel jack for the power supply. Here you can see it better. I originally tried to put the VGA connector closer, but the wall right here was too thick, and so I ended up moving it over a little bit further. You can really see the layer lines here from the 3D printer.
Is the VGA jack right above your expansion port connector?
It is, and so obviously this would not work in the final design. This is a total proto Frankenstein case. I'm just messing around. Obviously, that would be in the way of you trying to connect anything unless you put like an expander or jumper board in between to
Mhm.
give you the room. So yeah, this isn't final. I just wanted to have up until now, I've had that VGA connector just hanging in the air, and I thought I'm going to mount it to the case. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That wouldn't work. Um,
And we
okay,
can,
so
we can make changes, that'll go into that boss. So that it'll be cleaner, it'll be 90 degrees to the motherboard.
yeah, so here's kind of the motherboard with all of its changes, right? So we've got the angled headers for the keyboard connector. I soldered the wires directly in for the USB.
Yeah.
And here's the 32K RAM expansion.
Did you find it necessary to use that heatsink on the ULA?
Well, I mean, all for more than 40 years, they've been running without heat sinks on them, but they do run hot. And I thought, you know what, maybe it'll prevent it from dying a premature death.
Okay.
I don't know. But I'm actually thinking about getting one of the CPLD versions,
The
the more modern.
VLA, the modern.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think because I'm just trying to see how modern we can make a ZX81 and still have it be a ZX81.
At what point does it become something else? Yeah.
Well, because I mean, yeah, exactly. it, I was able to buy two original, old new stock ULAs from Stewart a
Yeah.
while back. But at some point those aren't going to be around either.
Right.
And I don't know how long people are still going to want to play with these machines, but it'd be kind of, and there are projects out there where you can build one completely from scratch using, discrete TTL and all kinds of stuff.
Stay on this picture for a minute. In the lower left, right where your thumb and your finger is, there's a lifted resistor.
Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. I was going to say something about that and I forgot. So that's R30, and what that does is it's a very low resistance. It ties one of the pins of the ULA to ground,
Mm-hmm.
and by doing that, it sets the ULA for the US or 60 hertz NTSC video.
Right.
And if you remove it or open it up and remove the ground, then it goes to 50 hertz. And I was just dying trying to get the VGA output to work on this Westby. I was able to do all the file, I was able to connect to Wi-Fi and load and store files, no problem. All that worked on the minimal invasive version without me changing anything.
Okay.
But I couldn't get the VGA to work, not for the life of me. And it wasn't until this morning, because I remember you and I talking about that, David, and I was like, wait a minute, I probably have to switch this miserable thing over to 50 hertz. And sure enough, I desoldered that one resistor, boom, it worked.
Well, see,
That was it.
I was under the impression that the Westby required the computer to be at 50 hertz for the save and load as well.
That's what I thought, but no, apparently not, because it's only for the VGA output, and probably also for the I haven't tried the LCD, because you can also connect an LCD to some of the other pins. I haven't tried that yet because I don't really see the point in having a small LCD screen when I can have a big VGA screen. But I know people have cut holes in their cases and put the LCD in there, and who knows, I might change my mind. I might get bored and want to try something else, but For the time being, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I thought everything would hinge on that frequency, but apparently it doesn't.
Okay.
And so
And,
yeah,
and this is the bottom of your RAM expansion, and
correct.
you're using one of those old like 300 mil wide static RAM chips that I think used to be real popular on motherboards for cache RAM or something like that.
Yeah, I found it. I can't remember where I bought the RAM chip. This is a Cypress
Yeah.
SRAM,
Exactly.
And-
Yeah, those Cypress
and-
chips were.
and I think can't remember if this is actually a 32K chip or if it's a 64K chip. But either way, obviously I can only get 32, and then there's some NAND gates over here. I found this design online. This is not my design.
Yeah.
I found it online. I thought it was really cool to be able to have 16K in 2 different regions of memory, because I do have very ambitious plans to start doing assembly programming with my ZX81, something
Well,
I've always
and-
wanted to do.
Thank you for that segue, because I was going to point out that there is a ROM that supports doing exactly that thing, and it will sit in parallel. I mean, you have to switch back and forth. It won't run in parallel, but it'll sit in parallel with the built-in ROM.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's ASMIC, ASZMIC, and it's only a 4K ROM. It's on the website.
So it's a monitor?
It's a assembly language development program, and the manual is extensive, like 3/4 of an inch thick.
Really?
It's amazing. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the
I gotta
manual's
get my
up on
hands
the-
on that.
Yeah, it's really good. But when they sold it, they sold it was a little doodad that plugged into your 81, and you pulled out the existing ROM and stuck it into one of the spots.
Ingo, so you want to actually program on the 81, like, and torture yourself?
No,
Okay.
I don't. No, I just wanted to be able to access, or store either data tables or other things in the other area of RAM that I
Mm.
have available, so that I could have the full 16K for the,
So you are going to
programming stuff.
cross-platform develop then?
I mean, you know what? I might do. I have to do a little bit of the old school way just to say that I did it. But yeah, I'm not going to torture myself. I'll use a Z80 assembler on my Mac, and then transpile the result. Well, actually, I don't even know if I'll have to transpile anything, but
Yeah, there's tools that'll turn I don't know, assembly into P files.
okay. That's what I'll probably have to do then. But yeah,
All right, since you
here
don't
you
want
can kind of see the resistor. This wasn't my intent with this photo, but you can see this one, or what's it? It's a 1 ohm. It says it's 10 ohm, right? Brown
Thank you, Mowgli.
0 1 0 times, yeah, 10 ohms. That would be 10 ohms, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, desolder right there. I was just trying to show the screws here where we've got the motherboard screwed down to the case.
And you replaced the audio jacks with
Yes, so
those things are
I
called.
did some experimenting around with an old iPhone to store and load programs, but from an iPhone instead of a cassette player, and I was successful in doing that. Now that I have the Westby, I left those in there, but I don't see myself ever doing it via audio anymore. I don't really see the point when you can load stuff over Wi-Fi and directly from the Westby.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's why those are there. And you can see over here, I slipped with the soldering iron and kind of melted the side of this guy a little bit, because those things happen. Here's two more mounting screws. here you can see our case is a little bit close
Mhm.
on our tolerances there. Same with this resistor here, it's pretty close.
Now those resistors weren't shoved over. You had, looks like you shoved them when you sort of
Yeah,
assembled the
I
case.
had to kind of move them over just to make
Okay.
room. That capacitor just barely was in the right place.
You've
And then-
socketed everything. I was gonna say, I'm looking right at that transistor. I'm like, wow, you even
So the reason why I socketed this transistor is because I wanted to be able to clock the ZX81 from my homemade clocking circuit where I could single step. And so, you know, I could pull this transistor out and clock it from my own clocking device.
nice.
And that's the only reason this is socketed. It's been finicky. Like if I bump that transistor just a little bit and it loses contact, then the computer crashes. Probably come up with something more permanent. But again, it was just for experimentation. Yeah, close up of the Traco power
Mhm.
supply and those jacks. So there's a keyboard.
And these
And,
are like you've printed something and cut it out and glued it.
Yeah,
to
these are they look a lot thicker this close up, but it's water transfer decals.
Really? Oh,
And yeah, I drew up all the keycaps in Inkscape several years ago, and I printed them onto laser transfer water slide decal paper, and then cut them out by hand, and then water transferred them onto plain black keycaps, and then hit them with about 4 or 5 coats of clear coat, of a matte clear coat, so that
Okay.
they wouldn't come off right away. This obviously wouldn't last a very long time for somebody who does a lot of typing, but it works for now until I come up with a more permanent solution. But yeah, that's the keycaps are still something that I hope to come up with some better ideas with, but works pretty good with the water slide decals.
yeah.
And then, so we've got this little opening in the case. So the front half of the case and the back half of the case are pretty much sealed up. And so the connectors just slip right through that slot. And then they come in and plug into the main board. And the
Mhm.
main board sits in this angled riser.
Little tray.
Yeah, it's like a little tray. That's my brother's design. Works out really nice. You slip the main board into the slot where you connect to the interface connector, and then you lay it down in this tray, and then you put in all the screws, and
We'll go back
screws
to
in
that
nice
picture
and
just for
tight.
1 second.
Oh, you want to go back?
Yeah, I just want to. So that that glass thing next to the ROM. I don't know if
Yes.
that someone else had showed a circuit board and had one of those in it. I thought, oh, what is that? That oddball thing.
It looks like an SMD capacitor inside.
That's exactly
there,
what it is. It's a surface mount capacitor encapsulated in a glass, enclosure to make it a
So somebody made an SMD into a through hole.
into a through hole part. Yeah. Yeah. Back in the early 80s. I mean, surface mount was, I think that was kind of near the starting of surface mount. It goes back into the 70s, but certainly. Yeah. And then that blue capacitor, clearly, someone designed it for a different, that's what is that, a radial, and they designed it for an axial capacitor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But typical Sinclair, we'll just buy the cheapest part available.
That's right. Just drop it in there. And I'm glad they did all that. I'm glad they made this the cheapest computer they could make, because I was able to afford one. And it was my first computer, when I was like 13.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very glad that they did that. But there were things that I wished it had. And my buddy had an Atari 800 with a actual keys on his keyboard, and it was basically a full-size keyboard, and it had color and it had sound, and but still I love this computer, and this project has been a lot of fun for both my brother and for me.
Yeah.
We've been having a blast with this. We meet like every Sunday night on Zoom, and we plot and scheme what next piece of Sinclair conquest we have in front of us.
Oh,
And
so you guys don't live locally to one another.
no, we don't. My brother lives in Southern California, and I'm clear across the country in upstate New York.
Huh.
So Zoom is a great thing because we wouldn't be able to do that otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see, you know, how it kind of slides into the connector slot here, and then we've got like a little bit of that L bracket here, you know, that ledge, and then it just gets screwed in. Oh, and this is showing the drop-in bezel here for the keyboard, covering up the circuit board. And all this is 3D printed on my 3D printer. Here you can see kind of a back view with the USB inside.
Yeah.
And
So Ingo, your little carrier board for the USB there, are you gonna turn that into a actual PCB?
yeah, I'd like to do that for the USB and also for the 32K RAM upgrade.
Cool.
Yeah, this was just proof of concept. Everything here is just proto as proto should be.
Well, I asked because, you know, there are other people who are gonna who probably want to do this, but don't
Yeah.
have, you know, perhaps the same level of skills, and working with a, you know, a carrier circuit board and
Yeah.
some simple instructions might be able to, you know, might be able to tackle that of just
Yeah.
dropping it in.
So originally I made my own composite video mod. Again, not my own design, found it online, did it on a proto board. It worked. My focus so far has been how to be able to do all this stuff so that either somebody could build one themselves and just order the boards and a few parts, right? And build it themselves and, you know, download the STL files. Or if they don't want to bother with all the time to put together their own KiloZed, they could, you know, order one. And
Right.
I don't know if there'll ever be a market for that or not, if people are going to be interested in that. It's not something I would do to, you know, try and make any real money, but it would just be fun. But mainly I wanted to make it so that anybody that has access to a 3D printer or 3D printing service can have the case printed. They can order the keyboard, circuit board, the USB adapter board, the RAM upgrade board, and you know, and make it so that it's as plug and play as possible. Obviously, I did a lot of soldering and modification on the main board, so you know, somebody would have to be not only capable but also not afraid to start soldering on their vintage computer.
Right.
But yeah, trying to
Yeah.
make it so that anyone can do it. And I think that's the last picture I have. Yeah. So
So you mentioned, you know, you can download files over Wi-Fi. You know, it just puts up its own sort of web server, and you just connect to that web server, and you can download files to the USB. Can you save from the, you know, 81, 1000, whatever, to the USB?
yes. So
Okay.
that memcheck, excuse me, the memcheck program that I showed you guys, I punched that in earlier today.
Okay.
And I saved it, and then saved it onto the USB.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it works the same way as you would from cassette. You hit the, you know, you hit save, your open quotes, you give it a file name, and you hit your close quotes, and you hit enter, and it saves
And
what's in memory.
you got a P file on the USB.
You get a P file on the USB.
Wow.
And so what's really cool too is that now you can take that P file and you can post it somewhere online. you could email it to somebody, you know, you could put it on a Google Drive or whatever. So yeah, it's really neat. I mean, you don't have to do a SD card sneaker net. You know, you don't have to hook up a cassette recorder or an iPhone. You just do it over your Wi-Fi network. When you, oh, hang on, let me see if I can find.
So aside from the
what's-
soldering, it seems like this is a really simple solution to implement.
It really
Okay.
is. I mean, the video version was a bit more work, but not like not ultra difficult. And but the MI version, the minimally invasive version. Here, I'm going to show my screen again. I want to show you guys something.
David,
Yes.
Johan here.
Hang on one sec, Johan. Look,
Johan, you're I can barely hear you.
well, he turned
He's
his mic on.
muted right now.
Well, I could barely hear him before, though. I could hear him, but just barely.
Oh, nice. So you were
Am
gonna
I
share.
on? Yes, I'm on, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was called by the guy who used the Westby, who built it. And he asked me for how much memory do you need to make it work in 1K. So it should be possible to even connect the Westby to a 1K ZX81 and load up to all my games in 1K as well, because it's so tight coded, the routines to load and save, that it should be possible to connect it to a 1K ZX81 and still play my games.
I didn't know that.
You bring up a really good point, Johan. The Westby downloads a little bit of code to the 81, correct? And then that's what makes the load and save work.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And it should be possible to do that. I haven't tried it myself. I don't have a recipe, so but when I might get to a meeting somewhere in Europe, I might work it out further, see how it's possible or what it's needed, or even how we can update the routine. But it was asked to me from what is the max size of a P file to load in a 1K ZX81, which is 949 bytes, by the way.
Oh.
So there is a bit of room to code everything in, and it should be possible, as I have understood.
Awesome. So for those of us
Excellent,
with 1000s, you know, we just got acres of room.
Yeah, you got a 1K extra.
All right, go ahead.
That's really cool, because I thought you had to have 16K to use it, because I thought I read that in a couple of different places, but that's really good news.
Yeah, that's really
thank you for sharing that, Johan. I'm gonna try it now. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna pull my 32K expansion out, drop in the 2K chip that I have, and then set the jumper, switch it back to 1K, and see if it'll work.
If it doesn't work, there are still plans to make it work in 1K.
That's really
okay.
cool. That's really cool. Well, I mean, the project is open source, so I mean, anybody that wants to tweak it, and he even says so in his README doc. You know, it's like, hey, and on the forum too, on the German forum, he's basically said, hey, have at it, right? I think it's super cool that such a neat project that's so easy to implement, and it's like, here you go, everybody enjoy, right? It's just the neatest thing. So I wanted to share the screen here real quick. This is when I first did the minimally invasive version. This was August 12th when I first booted it up, and this is again running at 60 hertz. The first screen that comes up after you type load, before you set up, before you create your connection to your Wi-Fi network, you get this screen. And you can see on the bottom here, it says Wi-Fi, little arrow, W to config. So you just literally press the W key on your keyboard, and then it takes you to this screen, and it shows the Wi-Fi networks that it sees. And then you select the Wi-Fi network by typing either 0 or 1. And then when you type that, it asks you for the password, and you got to punch in your password for the Wi-Fi network. And then you get the screen, and it gives you, you know, it assigns, your router assigns an IP address. And from here, you can see it says use save or load. And
That's cool.
well, here it says upload via Wi-Fi, right? So you go into, so you literally just go to this
IP
this
address.
IP address, and that accesses the file server, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which we saw earlier. Yeah. So really neat project. And so I mean now I can finally start doing some bigger coding projects because I have a way to save my work, which I didn't have for quite a long time.
Right. And Ingo, I'm going to selfishly ask that you make that PCB because I would like to make one for myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I plan on continuing in the spirit of how this started, right? And all the other people that have, you know, kindly made their hard work available to everyone. I understand there's some people out there that have made gadgets and gizmos and they're still charging for it and they're still keeping it close to their chest. I get it. But I definitely want to applaud the people that said, hey, you know, have fun.
Mhm.
Here you go.
Cool. Thank you, Ingo. Yeah, and Johan points out that this was probably developed because the Z-Expand, which is a similar device, was short. But one thing the Z-Expand doesn't do is generate VGA video, and this, like, you know, solves so many challenges with trying to use a 1000 now.
I would like to add one thing on that very same note, right? I have bought 3 or 4 different composite video capture cards, and they don't work. They just don't work. And so I thought,
Yeah,
all
I have
right,
that exact problem with the 2068 too. I cannot capture its composite video. It's all messed up.
Yeah.
but I went on Amazon and I bought a VGA capture device. And now that I have VGA output, and I mean, it is really sharp, very clean, very steady, noise free. So now if I want to make a YouTube video or right now share with all you guys, right? It shows up as another webcam, and all I got to do is switch to that capture device, and I'm able to share my screen with you guys. So if you know we were coding something or messing around, or you know, like I said, making a YouTube video, it makes it super easy. And now people can, without emulator, right? I mean, it almost looks like you're playing with an emulator. It's so clean.
Yeah, that's really nice. It is really nice.
Hey,
Cool.
Dave.
And
Hey.
Larry, our other Westby expert.
Yeah. I built the Westby 2 years ago this month, and I was happy with it some ways I wasn't. But a couple of things I note, and when you put in your password, if you have a lowercase, you have to use a graphics 9 to do lowercase.
Yeah. In fact, my Wi-Fi password's all lowercase, so you have to basically switch into
right.
You have to use a shift key and key them all in that way.
The downside of saving to this thing, it creates a file on there quick, you know, a P file, but it's saving at normal save speed. Unless you found some way to get around that.
No, I haven't messed around with it enough yet. I'm just barely now, you know, got it working, and but it loads extremely fast.
Yes, it's great. It's great. And another, when you add files to your server, if you want to update the screen on your whether VGA or composite, you know, hit the X key. You probably discovered that. Maybe not. It'll update the screen on your VGA.
Oh, cool. No, I haven't done that yet. Is that when you go into the sys menu?
when you bring up the, when you load recipe onto your ZX81 or whatever, and you add a new file and you want to get to it, so you have to, when you add it to your online, on your file server, it won't show up on the screen on your ZX81. So you hit the X key and it'll update it.
Oh, okay. So it does a reload, a refresh.
Refresh, yes.
Okay,
And
cool.
And I just noticed on the file server, if you want to update that screen, you got to hit the F5, to refresh the screen. Otherwise, it doesn't show up there either. At least that's what it just did just now. So yeah, it's a nice little device. I like it. It works. It's more reliable than my composite video out with the Pokemon one, the same one you got there. Sometimes it gets erratic. It didn't like the VLA81 too much. Sometimes you got to reset the values, and that's a pain because I get those screwdrivers, but they don't work real great for adjusting your sync and pixel levels. So,
so you're using the VLA 81.
Well, right now I'm not.
Okay.
I went back and forth. I haven't tried it with the Westby yet because I got like 5 of these ZX81s, and I have 2 that I had fully working, and one of them I did not like the VLA at all. So I'm still learning how to use that thing. That's kind of, because what they show you pictures online in the manual doesn't really doesn't seem to work, but it works fine otherwise. It's the ULA. So I ordered mine from New Zealand. So
Okay.
there's some guy over here and somewhere in the United States is selling for about, I don't know, $70 more, I guess. If you want them faster, order from him. If you want, not in a hurry. It'll take a couple weeks from New Zealand. So
Larry,
yeah.
have you put a bunch of files on your Westby?
Oh yeah, right now I must have about 15, 16 on there right now.
And is there a point at which the listing has to be paged or something?
On the screen of the ZX81, yeah, it'll just say down at the bottom, it have a little inverted N, so it's next. So just hit the letter N, and it'll pop the next screen.
Oh wow!
If you got more screens, get plenty more. I haven't gone that far yet. Just keep doing it.
Just keep hitting next. All right. So you could put the entire internet. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, you.
Yeah, right now I've got. I don't have a lot of big programs on here, so I got 771,000 of 8.9 million bytes.
Go ahead, Johan.
Can you use this kind of wildcard to the P files that you only get results from every time? So something like
that. Don't work with P files, yeah.
So it doesn't do TCX stuff. It has to be P, right?
It doesn't.
No.
Okay.
Because on my ZXPC interface, you could use some wildcards, and I think on the Pico, it's well, I hope it's available as well, because it's based on my program. I think it's possible too, or isn't it?
To do wildcards? I don't know. That's a good question. I never even thought about that. Hang on, Larry, you're trying.
I had coded it in my interface, so it was possible to show all Pac-Man variations, or only the games with whatever. So if you got 1,600 games on your file, then it's easier to just use some kind of wildcard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll have to ask Ricardo if that's in the code, because the code for the Pico is all MicroPython. I don't think I think he went in concept, but not not a perfect copy. Larry, you were going to show us something?
Yeah, I showed this before some time back. This is another device. I don't know if you can see this.
Yep.
You see it, but you can't see the display. How do you,
is that like a TZX player or something?
That's a TZX Arduino thing. This was a Zaxxon version. It loads it doesn't save though. But it will load at normal tape speeds, maybe a little faster. So this is handy too, but it's got the SD card and it's paying like this ZX band where you got to take it out, put it in your computer, load the programs up, put it back in, and it's kind of cumbersome. You can have like directories where you can create a folder and put like items underneath. And then you can go to that folder, hit one of the keys, and it'll bring up, then you can go through that folder. And you can easily get out of it. And it takes you back to the start. It's a little more clumsy. It's not as friendly as the ZX Band or the ZX Westby is, but yeah. Like right now, it just says select files on here, and it's got a name of a file. And as far as I know of.
Now, Larry, do you select the
yeah.
file and then like
and then you hit
type load on the computer and
then you hit on here, there's a play button. You hit it twice on here, down here, and you play it twice, and it'll start, because the first time you press, it'll just say paused, and then you press it again, and it'll start loading.
Okay.
And so you can watch it, you know. I haven't tried using this with this ZX Westby as far as display goes. I haven't done that yet.
Well, and that was my next question. My guess is you can't use the two together because the Westby downloads.
Well, you would that you can unplug it. Well, see, the Westby, once you load a program, you use it Westby again, you have to reload it.
Okay.
It only stays just for that time, like far as I know. It might be hiding somewhere, but you know, if you want to run it again, you have to just type load, you know, quotes again and a reload. So
okay.
And I believe you can tell the Westby to quit listening. You need to load something from tape, and because I know I've done that before. Or I've loaded something from tape or off of like a sound card on a computer because it was in the wrong format. Loaded it onto the computer and then saved it to the Westby.
Yeah, I've seen people online that have put switches in, and they basically disconnect. I think they disconnect the Westby from the tape line.
I thought there was an actual command that you could send the Westby to stop
listening.
Yeah, stop.
That makes sense. That would be even nicer. Yeah. Okay. I haven't dug that deep yet, but I remember seeing on some of the forums people put a switch in. Maybe that's something they fixed by putting it in software. Thanks, Joe.
Cool. Thank you, Ingo and Larry and Johan and Joe. Adam, did you want to know if this was the final or?
Well, I have a question. Like Michael, that's your brother, right? He was in the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yep.
Ad.
Pardon?
I was wondering if Michael had anything to add. That's your brother, Mike? Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you go?
I think you pretty much covered it pretty well.
Yeah. Okay.
For a Bavarian.
Better watch it.
We have to give each other a hard time.
Sibling fight.
We're related, you know. Right? Can't let anything go easy. No, I think he did a great job.
Well, you did too, man. The case is awesome. It wouldn't be possible without the case.
Well, we're still finishing it up too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you didn't mention about the possibility of making a cast case.
You tell them.
Oh,
hey,
well.
Do you have an ability to turn your microphone up a little bit, Michael?
I'm sorry?
Do you have can you turn your mic up a little bit? It's really low.
Well, that's a really good question because I don't really know how.
Okay.
Audio?
Yeah.
No. I'll just speak louder. How's that?
Okay.
Yeah. No, we were considering to do like you know, a mold. I don't know if you guys could see this.
Oh yeah.
This ZX81 resin molded. You know, we were going to do that with the KiloZed, you know, like this one right here. So this one is 3D printed. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is a very good print, but you know, as a for production purposes, we were thinking about doing you know, a resin mold essentially. And so we're kind of kicking that idea around depending on how much demand there is, you know.
So, Michael, how would you do the resin mold? Would it be one of those like soft molds, like the silicone?
Silicone mold.
Okay.
Do you
And
have one there? Show them.
well,
You still have one of the molds in
this
your office?
one, you mean the one that we did?
No, the mold, the
The-
mold.
the-
You still have the silicone molds
Oh,
anywhere?
oh, yes. Well, that was the first time I ever tried. So, you know, it wasn't super professional, but you got to start somewhere, right? Yeah.
Oh, well, he's looking. They do that in the automotive world for the old vintage cars.
They make silicone molds and make new parts.
The lenses,
The
parking light, brake
lenses.
light.
Makes sense. Okay.
This is the bottom half of
Okay.
the ZX81, for instance, right? And then, of course, you have to vent it, right?
Yep.
And there's a case inside of that. So the case would look kind of like this right here. You see the,
Uh,
so you
I was gonna ask you that.
unscrew it. And then you inject the resin into it. And then the whole thing goes into a pressure pot, you know,
Yeah.
and then it stays there for the next 35 years. And then you pull it out, not literally, of course, like, you know, 16 hours, something like that.
Do you
Yeah.
have to use a release agent?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, when it comes to silicone, this particular kind of silicone, you really just need a release agent to get the master removed, you know, for the original. When you're taking the original copy, you need to have release agent there.
Okay.
But when you're pouring, most of the time, I should say, with that high tech, really expensive silicone, it will take. There's no need for it. It'll only stick to itself.
And
Silicone. That's it.
and what about the resin? I mean, how do you have to force it in? Do you have to literally inject it, or is it a
Yeah.
pour?
Well, that you could put it under a vacuum, you know, but depending how small the port is, the best way to do it is actually you have like multiple multiple points where you could inject literally with hypodermic needles, really big ones though.
Yeah.
And essentially make it so that you could vent all the corners, you know.
Right.
And when you're done, you're actually pulling out that thing. It looks like a porcupine.
Oh, so it's got flash all around.
Huh?
It's got flash all around, you know,
Yeah.
extension pieces and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. You got to be mindful about it because, as you probably noticed, like, you know, the ZX81 has these bosses.
Yeah.
Right? If you make it clear, you end up with this bubble, you know, this crazy idea of you know, and you can't just trim it because you could see all the trim marks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you got to be mindful. You got to orientate everything, and it's a pain in the butt. But
That looks like a lot of work.
yeah, but when you're done, it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks fantastic. That's really nifty. Wow. All right. So Ingo and Michael, we're expecting more from you. How big is the Mega Z going to be physically?
Well, I think just like the KiloZed, it's gonna the form factor is gonna be based off of the size of the keyboard. So whether it's gonna be just a full size keyboard with like the full space bar and shift keys on both sides, or if it's gonna have a numpad on the side, which I don't know, might be overkill. But I think that's pretty much gonna dictate how big the MegaZed's going to be.
Mhm.
The other thought though is thinking of something like the Apple II having an expansion plane in the back where you can put your own adapter cards and play around and tinker and experiment. You know, if you wanted to
officially, that makes it not a ZX81 anymore. Okay.
That's where you've
Okay.
crossed the bar.
Nah, man, come on. You know, what if you
Oh,
wanted
look
to
at
turn
that.
your ZE into a PLC, right? And you want to put some IO cards in there.
Gotta
Nice.
have our fun too, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
When your ZX81 looks like an S100 machine, it may not be a ZX81 anymore.
Well, you know what,
True,
Mowgli?
true.
It's funny you should say that because there was an article in Sync, you know, ages ago where somebody had taken a micro ace and expanded it out into what looked like an S100 enclosure and with a bus, you know.
Make it look like an Altair.
There we
Take
go.
it for
Hey,
big
there
money.
you go. That's a
There we
great
go.
idea.
I love that idea. A bunch of switches and blinking
Yeah.
lights.
Yep.
Yes, if you take away its keyboard, it's even better. Yes.
That's right.
Paddle switches.
Paddle,
That's right. That's
The
right.
ZX75.
Oh my God.
knife switches.
The ZX75. I like that, Adam. You gotta coin that phrase.
Switches alone would, you know, triple the value of the computer.
Oh yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Cool. All right,
So one question I had was, because there's always the fun of there's different platforms that are different retro platforms and stuff. And like I haven't seen any mention of FujiNet for the ZX80 whatever or Sinclair lately. That seems to have died out a little bit. And I didn't know, because that platform is going pretty heavily on at least the Apple II and the Atari at the moment. And there's the Atom version. And then they're working on expanding it to, I think, the Coco and the C64, I think, are next, and things. Does anybody know where that is, and if that may someday happen on the Sinclair?
Funny you should ask. I have an email from Michael Carter back in 2023 saying that he was working with somebody in England to design the FujiNet for the Spectrum, and then, you know, the 2068. But I haven't heard from Michael on that since. I can ping him, see what he says.
Yeah, because there hasn't been discussion of that in any of the FujiNet stuff that I have seen.
Right.
And so that's a little bit worrisome, because they're kind of big on putting out a newsletter every couple months at least to say, hey, here's where these various projects are. And the Sinclair project has not been on the list for quite a while.
Oh, well, you know, from the Spectrum side of the world, they have so many solutions already that they may be less motivated.
I mean, fair point. Yes, for the actual Spectrums, there are a lot of options.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send Michael an email and see where he's at. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. All right. I'll give you a brief update on what's happening with the TS Pico. Ricardo has done a ton of work.
Well, before you give an update,
sorry,
why
go
don't you
ahead.
say what it is?
So for those of us who don't know yet, the TS Pico is a device inspired by Johann Coleman's work with the Spectrum a number of years back. And instead of connecting a Spectrum to a PC, it connects a 2068 to a Raspberry Pi Pico. And what it lets you do is load and save to an SD card. It supports a you know, the standard, it's a FAT32 system on the SD card, so basically DOS file system on the card. So at the basic level is being able to load tap files from an SD card directly into your 2068. So no more cassette players. You can also save your programs to the 2060 to the SD card. It has flash, a 512K flash chip, and a 512K static RAM chip. And the flash has slots, in essence, that can be mapped to the dock bank. So it can be, you can load a cartridge image into one of these slots and then run that cartridge directly from the Pico on your computer. And then I can't recall off the top of my head. You can also load other ROM images, and so there's a clone of the ZX Spectrum from Brazil called, I think, the TK90 or the TK95. You could load that ROM in there. There's a ZX Spectrum ROM in there, so, and there's a set of commands for switching from the 2068 to the Spectrum ROM, and running that. And the Spectrum ROM has been updated just enough to support load and save with the TS Pico. There's not as much free room in the Spectrum ROM, so the full command set's not available. Go ahead, Johan.
To be honest, there is 1.5K free in the ZX Spectrum ROM, which you could recode with an EEPROM or something like that.
Yeah.
I used a bit of that part on my interface, and my interface was also capable of loading not just tape files, but also Z80s and snap files. All those formats were capable of selecting and loading into the game.
Yeah.
And for memory dumps like a snap file or a Z80 file, it used some registers on the screen to look them the correct value. And I think the Pico will do something like that.
Right. And so, and as Ingo was alluding to, the Pico, the vast majority of the code in the Pico is MicroPython that runs on the Raspberry Pi Pico processor. Gustavo has added some extensions to the 2068 to give some additional functionality, like getting a directory, changing directories, making directories, DOS-y commands, and some other. There's a load of other features in Gustavo's full vision for his extensions,
which is about the same as my interface, because you could also change directories, even change stations, like the A station to the C station or something like that.
Oh yeah, we don't have stations.
Possible. you could change everything. You could change directory, make a new directory, delete files. Everything was possible. So there was some kind of DOS command you could send in and then use it on your hard disk, and this will be now the same on your disk, which is used by the Pico.
No, the key point. Hi, this is Gustavo. The key point of the TPI commands is you can use any existing tape program and run it in this system without modification. That is the main objective of the extension, of the TPI extension. That's why you can use save and load or merge commands as you write in tape. The only command you need to add typing on the edit line or add into the program is the save TPI : and then the specific command. The ROM use the free space available on the 2068 and in ROM, home and XROM. That's why we cannot port this system to the Spectrum directly, because the Spectrum not have any room space on the ROM. Okay, this need more than 1.8K. That is the reason. Okay, and also and add the functionality of the capture, lprint, and list functions on ROM. Okay, you can also in the future, when the Pico support this, you can get a TXT file with the listing of the any program, or copy in high resolution the screen in a BMP file. That is the scope of the modification in the ROM. Okay, but the rest is only write in Python, this high-level language, and also is easy to modify or patch or add functionality. That's why we have a frontier between the home ROM assembly program and then the functionality MicroPython coding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as I was saying, because it's written in MicroPython and it is, it's up on the GitHubs, as it were, folks can do more than just, you know, what Ricardo and Gustavo have initially designed it to do. You can add your own commands. I mean, there's a built-in functionality just to adding new commands, and you know, supporting snap files, Z80 files, TCX. It's all relatively easy to add because it's just a matter of, you know, writing the necessary Python code. So Ricardo's made a bunch of updates. We have been beta testing them. Adam and Ryan and Francois in particular have been very good. We discovered an interesting issue where not everybody was using the same version of MicroPython, and that may have been a challenge. So it turns out Ricardo had one version and we had a different version. But yeah, we're making good progress. And the goal is that you'll be able to download the update as a package, put it on the SD card, stick it in the Pico, turn your computer on, and it will automatically do the update for you. So that's what we're shooting for.
I didn't actually know that was the end goal.
That is the end goal. Yes.
Can you tell us something about the speed it is loading? Because when I loaded the 48K program, it needed about 7 seconds in my interface, which I was quite pleased with it. But
yeah,
what's the speed of the Pico?
I feel like it's probably about the same. It's pretty quick. I mean, it's not, obviously it's not, you know, slow like tape is, but I haven't actually tried to time it.
You guys need to start doing some benchmarks.
I don't know if we're that far along quite yet, honestly.
Come on, let's put the cart in front of the horse. Let's do some benchmarks.
Yeah. That's a good question, Johan. Well, what did you use to test with? What was a 48K program? But I mean, literally, was it 48K in size?
Well, I had several. First of all, the program like Z80 dump is exactly 48K, but I had also 48K programs like pole position or 007 City Hall view to a kill, which is exactly 48K.
Okay.
So those are blocks you could use to test it with. If you can load them in one go, because you should have been possible because the ROM is a little bit altered, so it should load in one go. But those are 2 programs I can tell by heart which are exactly 48K because I made a program to crack them into 2 blocks in smaller pieces to copy them. Those are by heart which I know.
I'll try them before the Wednesday meeting, David.
So those are Spectrum programs,
yeah.
Right, Johan? So you'll have to do that in the Spectrum mode.
Yeah, I understand. It should load in the Spectrum. I mean, it has enough support, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And it'll load as fast as, you know.
Is that like an Atari soft game, the pole position game?
Yes, it's the one, but you could have a version which is not exactly 48K. So I would try to see if you can find a view to a kill City Hall 007, which is exactly 48K. And you have to load it with load code because it will load the screen and directly after that it will load the code. It's 1 block of code in 1 turn to load.
But in this case, you have a different approach because you can, for example, load into the dock bank full 64K in memory. And then when the Timex start, you switch the ROM. It's a different appointment. You can load all the code inside the RAM and then map the full block of RAM into the Timex.
But that's not a
That's not the issue. It's about the time it needs to transfer from the Pico into the 2068, which is the loading time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, if you guys really start complaining about like a couple of seconds here or there, I will find you and I will smack you upside the head.
I'll send you a list of addresses.
I don't mind a few seconds, but it's just a question: how long does it take?
It's very quick. It's probably a few seconds, like yours was.
Yes, no more than 5. Depend.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I expect it to be faster than my interface.
Well,
no, but the time depends of the SD card reading. That is the time delay, because in the C80 assembly language, it's very fast. It's a loop with the 3 instruction in assembly. That is very, very faster. You read an input by.
I think I understand your question, because you need to load from the SD card into the memory.
Yep.
And which was also an issue in my program to speed that up. And I used Pascal, which is, well, something like Python. It's quite the same, I think, in language. And the problem was that the reading routines which you use normally to read from a file will read up until the end of the line or just character by character. And I solved it with a routine which could read a block in one go. And the block could be smaller than the whole program, so you had to do partial read and again. But I solved the reading from the SD card into the memory by reading a bigger block than you would normally do. I think if you use a routine that reads small parts, I think it's possible to upspeed it with another read routine.
No, in my ROM, you have a preheader because the basic low-level communication is a frame communication. You can send a block and then receive the data or send more data if necessary, depending on the function.
Gustavo, he's talking about loading from the SD card. So actually, Johan, to your point, the way that the Pico works is you have to mount the tap file first, as if you are putting it into a putting a tape into a cassette player, right?
Which is the same as my interface.
Yeah. And so what it does, and Python has a library for talking to SD cards, and so we use that library. It just copies that file into the memory of the Pico, and then when you issue the load command on the Timex to actually load the program, that's where the ROM load routine comes into play, and it's very quick at that point. But yeah, it's a 2-step process.
Yeah. No, also, we're probably getting just a bit too deep into this for this kind of a meeting. This is like what we talk about during the hardware meeting, like TSP meeting.
I know that that is maybe an important point. Is I don't know if your routine support handshaking or not, because in our Pico we support
Gustavo,
handshaking.
he's talking about getting the thing off of the SD card and into memory in some way. There's nothing to do with the handshaking portion. Yeah. So long story short, progress is being made, and we're aiming to have an upgraded thing available in the not too distant future. It depends entirely.
And I think we've already talked about how it can like you can use it with Jeff's VGA card and things like that, right?
Yes,
we've mentioned that.
Right. So yeah, and Jeff Burrell, I don't think Jeff's here today. Well, there's 2 Jeffs. Jeff could be here. Jeff Burrell designed a board that also uses a Raspberry Pi Pico to generate VGA for the 2068, kind of like what the Westby does for the 1000 or 81. Yeah. So the other thing that theoretically is on our agenda is continuing our discussion a little bit about activities that we discussed a month ago, almost, August 18th, in terms of how do we preserve our things? What do we do with our things? Some of us might be looking for a place for our things to land and not just be stuck in a closet, but actually displayed where people can see them. Our world is very special, and no other microcomputing world is as special as us. This is widely acknowledged. Our machines are the most amazing that were ever made, and therefore need to be at the forefront of any microcomputer, display and discussion. How do we make that happen?
Well, we already have several things available to the 2068 that are shows across the country in the world. More than that, you mean?
Yeah, well, right. There's displays at various museums. And
no,
actually,
I mean entire shows devoted to it. Have you not attended?
Oh, right. Well,
yes.
I did miss the last one, which I think was in '93.
Was there one devoted to the 2068 for real?
It was like the last Timex.
That sounds about right. With Dayton, it was the last time I remember getting to it, where we had a concentrated look.
Yeah.
That's actually surprising to me. That's awesome.
And interestingly enough, sorry, Jack Boatwright sent me a bunch of stuff, some of which was buttons from one of those shows, as well as name tags from some of the folks who had organized those things. Johan, for the Pico, it's ts-pico.com. I don't know off the top of my head if that also links to the GitHub, but we'll dig it up. And so some of the things that we talked about were, Adam, you had mentioned making a recording of the cassette that came with the 2068. This is how to use the keyboard thing, because we have Peyton, who's exactly, Paul. Let me just spotlight you for a second, Paul. We have we we have folks like Peyton coming in, who may have used it in the past, certainly may not remember how to use the keyboard, and there is a learning curve. It's a small one, but there is a learning curve with using the Sinclair keyboard mechanism.
I want to say something, because people talk about that quite a bit, but when we all were introduced to typing on any computer, or even a typewriter for some of us, we had no idea why the keys weren't in alphabetical order. We were like, what is this keyboard so awkward for? And we eventually, we can touch type now, hopefully, and it just takes a little bit of time. Even I get used to it, and I feel pretty clumsy about it, but I just have to memorize where the keys are. I mean, I know how to use them, but there are some cheat sheets out there that help us find them.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about capturing Carl's sort of repair savvy tips, right? To make it easier for folks like Peyton, whose computer is showing just black and white bars. What does that mean? And what can I do to get to an actual display?
And you were going to put together a list of how to basically
digitize tapes.
Collect digitized tapes.
Yep. Actually, I'm gonna rope Joe in on that, because Joe thankfully has been doing the 81/1000 tapes, and he has. Joe, did you switch to using that other tool that could do it in the time domain or frequency domain? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it's it's right here. Moment.
But it's been pretty successful for you, Joe.
Well, it was a little hard getting going because it's not a plug and play type piece of software. You have to load some stuff from the web, which acts as a framework for this application.
Yeah.
And that framework is being updated all the time. And I rapidly found out that the framework was originally, or the program was originally written for a version of the framework that apparently no longer exists. And every time I open a tape, I get a warning that says, in the next version, your program's not going to work because these features are changed.
Oh.
So I've been purposely not upgrading the framework. But yeah, it's the Vandezande ZX81 DAT tape reader. It's on GitHub. I can put the link in the chat here.
Yeah.
And in the on our message board there was some back and forth of what we had to do to get it to actually work with the current version of the framework. So there were some tweaks that had to be made. I think somebody that's, a programmer might need to look at that and say, oh, it's probably a simple fix, and they just need to update it to work with framework again, and it'd be a much better product.
Right.
But yeah, it is a lot more forgiving as far as bad tapes. And even when it can't figure out, it gives you the option to go in there and search through the tape for missing bits or bits that were not understood, and allows you to edit them directly in the data. So you can actually pull the text data of what the program sees out and manipulate it and then put it back in. It's very handy. In fact, let me try to see if on this tablet I can bring it up with Zoom.
So to that end.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Here, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah. Oh, that's
Okay.
interesting.
So this is what I see when I bring in a tape, and you can see, like, right in this area, there's some noise right at the beginning of the tape, and it just puts a question mark or a dash there saying, hey, I don't understand this, you need to fix this. And then, so you have the bit, which is right there,
Yeah.
right? And then where it is time-wise in the tape, and then how long it is. So that's 159 ticks, right?
Oh.
So you can scroll down through here, and let me go ahead and get, this is the error that I get every single time, indicating that, like, the automatic scrolling feature is not going to work soon. So, but I can just ignore that. But you can do it like a Control F, right? And put in a question mark, and it'll take you to the next question mark. So here's a 0 that did not come in.
Right.
And you can then just say, okay, well, that's obviously a 0. I can see that that's a 0, right? So I can change the question mark where my cursor is there to a 0. And then I can come over here and say, oh, well, that really should have been like 72 ticks long. And then I can get rid of the rest of the garbage. And now we have a good bit.
Huh.
Okay.
Wow.
And yeah, you can just scroll through there and look for all the errors. This is the one I'm currently working on. It's pretty bad. But yeah, this is not how a normal read would look. In fact, I can go way down here. I think there's some, equally as ugly. Okay,
Oh,
so this is what a normal 0 would look like, something more like along these lines.
Yeah, nice and clean.
Here's a normal 1 over here.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, but this, I mean, some of the manufactured tapes that I have versus some of the homebrew tapes, the manufactured tapes, they are almost look like the bit pattern you get out of an emulator. They're so crystal clear.
Wow.
And then there's some that are noisy like this one. And I think it depends on what machine it was produced on and what tape player it was produced on, all the different factors. But yeah, that's how I work on it. And then when you're all done, you can come down here to the bottom and it says save as TZX, and you can click that. And it saves it off. And then once it's saved, you can import that into 81 or another emulator and turn it into a P file or turn it into a B81 text listing. B81 files is just a text representation of the basic listing. So yeah.
Wow. So this is actually, this is a better interface than that other program, the name of which escapes me.
There's been several I've used, and this is probably the best interface by far.
Yeah.
For editing. Yeah.
For editing, yes. Yeah. Because it strikes me as a lot clearer than the one that's available on the ZX81 tape website. But yeah, cool. So like I said, Mowgli, I'm gonna rope Joe in.
Yeah. So, and this works for ZX81. It does not work for Spectrum tapes or 2068 tapes, or there was a product called ZXLR8.
Yep.
Accelerate.
Yeah, Accelerate, and it basically patched the save routine on the ZX81 to make it more like the Spectrum or the 2068.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a bunch of tapes that are saved with that format that are going to be
right. And I don't have a tool that's letting me read the Decelerate ones yet. So I tried. I think I tried it with a Spectrum tool, and it didn't know what to do with it. So.
Yeah, we might have to use real hardware for those.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm seeing like two different sets. One, the beginner version, and then one, the more advanced version.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just saying.
No, and you make a good point, Mowgli, because I have done the beginner version, which is just record the 81 tape into the computer, and the emulator 81 will load from a WAV file, and so that's what I've used. Is a WAV file. How do I? Are you gonna go and show us something, Joe?
I was gonna see if I could see if this will run still on this machine.
But yeah, and 81's pretty good. I mean, it won't work with some really bad tapes, but it's pretty good. And it also has this really neat feature of when you load a WAV file, you can press one of, I don't remember which button it is, but you can press a button and it will just shoot through the file. And if it can, loads it into the computer and turns it also into a P file just super quick.
Right. So yeah, this is the other program that David was talking about.
Yeah.
And with this bad tape, you can see that it should see one program here, and it sees all these different things because it's completely confused as to what all the noise was. And there's no way to go in there and easily edit this and say, oh, well, that's a 0 or that's a 0 and that's a 1, and so these. Where it's light blue, it says, well, I think that's a 0. And where it's dark blue, it says, I think that's a 1. And here it says, I have no idea what this is. So it just drops it off. And this needs a relatively clean tape in good condition to to do a good conversion. Right. Mm-hmm. And the other one, you can do more editing so that that's why it's better for bad tapes.
Yeah.
And honestly, any tape that's 40 years old is not a good tape. I think I've come across 3 that were actually just load it, run it through the translator, and it just worked the first time with no edits.
Wow. Those are Ryan's tapes, right?
No, no, the tapes that I had that had Ryan's software on it were pretty bad. But again, those were not mass manufactured. They weren't like from a software house. Those were from somebody copying tapes at a user group or something like that.
Yeah. Cool. So I started building a little spreadsheet in Google Sheets. Hopefully we can work together in Google Docs. I have a space that I've created for stuff for this group. It's where Joe uploads the things that he's converted, and I upload stuff for you guys to look at every once in a while. And hopefully we can use this this Google Docs space to work on archiving stuff together. Paul.
So I guess we need testers.
Yeah.
To try it too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's all sorts of roles. I mean, you know, Carl had mentioned making some videos. You had mentioned making some videos. I think a lot of folks, you know, that's a good entree into, you know, the darkness of the Timex Sinclair world. Here, let me show you this video. This is so easy to do. But yeah, we could do that. And then, you know, we can also use it as a place to capture, you know, capture our knowledge, capture shortcuts. I think Ryan had mentioned something about finding some shortcuts, you know, buried in a document, and, you know, we could surface those into, you know,
he said he found them in some old
master
newsletters.
tool for people, you know, new and old, to the 2068. Yeah.
What shortcuts?
Keyboard shortcuts or pokes or something like that. You'd found some stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the last meeting, the last Monday meeting.
Are you talking about the? Well, the only one I remember was like I found in newsletter of like, oh, there's a bug in the ROM or something, and here's how to fix it. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. That's a perfect kind of example, right? Was it the delete key bug?
I don't remember which one exactly. I was just looking at some tabs in my browser, cleaning it up, and I found one on your site and it's talking about the flaw in the XROM addressing, how you can add, I guess you could go in and add the lines for like whatever it is, 13, 14, 15, whatever, so that you could then address
the full.
Otherwise it just selects the 8K.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yep.
And then it seemed like it had some good suggestions for things too. That one, I looked at that and I thought, boy, you know, if we ever sort of get that SCLD you know, substitute and just make a, you know, 2068, we could really go in there and fix a lot of things and make it potentially pretty interesting, it seems like.
Yeah.
But by, you know, some of it like that addressing thing like that, and some other bugs. Which I don't know, does fixing some of those break some software?
Well, so I mentioned, you know, this delete bug, and if you have ever had to, you know, delete something in a command line, you've experienced it, where at a certain point after you have deleted the first command, and you're getting to the point where you either want to delete the colon or the line number.
Something with a K key key cursor.
Yeah, it pops up the
Oh,
delete
in the
keyword
manual,
instead.
in the manual, it gave you the advice. It says, do it so you get the delete command.
Yeah.
To appear, and then hold down delete.
Yeah.
So you get the delete command to appear, and then the repeat would get you through it.
Right. Right. It's a bit of a weird thing. Yeah.
I actually didn't realize that was a bug. I thought like you kind of need to have that in case you wanted to use that command or something.
No. It's the deleting of it. When you get to the colon, it says, "Oh, you're pressing delete. You want the delete keyword," and it keeps reappearing and deleting itself. And so the trick was and it gets caught up with the keyboard repeat. So the trick was that it said, let it do delete, then do delete and then get off the key and then hold it down to let the keyboard repeat take it through. So if you got to delete through a colon where you're going to get a K cursor and delete would appear, or it's the line number, you let the delete appear and then hold delete down and then hold delete down to let it repeat through that and consume those. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was things you did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, there were other things like I never experienced because I mowed a lot of lawns and bought mine with the 16K RAM pack, and so I never. Well, not that I never, because obviously you could just pull the RAM pack off to do some 1K programming. So that you would see that in the magazines. That was fascinating. So that led me into, it's talking about the storage and saving so many bytes. And so I was just actually looking at that program, the Galaxian one, and doing that.
What you're talking about there, Ryan, is the program someone typed in recently that was 20-line program that made a Galaxian game in BASIC. Is that one?
Yeah, there seems to be a bug in it too. At least for me, was that everything's your ship and firing are all off by one column.
Now, is that a bug or is it just an extra challenge to make it?
Yeah, so what line is it? Where it prints I looked at the logic and so when it prints a leading space. So in line 200 where it prints you at column G, it prints a space there and then your ship starts. Well, all the tests are for column G, so everything looks like it happens on the space instead of on your guy that's in the next column at G+1. So it looks like, but the logic's all there. So it looks like all what you have to do is change 200 to print it V, G-1.
So we'll get that corrected in the email list, right?
Well, I don't think the program wasn't actually even posted. I think he just talked about it.
Oh no, I thought.
No, it's been posted.
Yeah, he posted it. Yep. Mm-hmm. I want to ask. Paul asked a really cool question. If you have a 2020 cassette player recorder, right? Like all ancient cassette players and recorders, there are these little rubber or whatever belts inside of it, and sometimes those just disintegrate and turn back into smeary old blobs of carbon or something. It's terrible. It's gross. I found someone had posted a message somewhere about all the belt sizes that you need. They're commonly available. And that would, because the 2020 is the same thing as the Mini Set 9 and this cassette player from GE and a cassette player that was available from Sears in Canada. These belts apply to all of that. And so Paul was asking whether a tutorial on maintaining tape decks, I don't know if he means in general or just that model, would be too obscure. I don't know. I don't think that's too obscure. I think that's a sort of a valuable thing for, some folks still use tape decks. I mean, you have to use tape decks. Joe and I have to use tape decks in order to digitize the tapes. So, you know, for me, that's valuable information. That's really, you know, useful stuff.
And there
Paul?
are some YouTube videos out there that already go over the mini set 9.
Oh, do they? Oh,
yeah. I think you can just literally search YouTube for mini set, and it'll come up with somebody that's gone through. Because the first time I tore mine apart, I remember watching a YouTube video too.
Oh, cool. So we can just link to prior work.
You can also order, you know, assortments of belts too.
Yeah, you have to be careful of that, because I've gotten some from Amazon and stuff that are just absolute garbage. They last for about a week, you know,
Oh.
and then they start
wow.
spreading. So yeah, you want to order them from someplace you trust. Some of the Chinese ones, you might as well just use a rubber band. The quality is so low. But there are plenty of places out there that sell really high quality belts in the right sizes.
Okay. I have one thing that I want to ask of y'all. Adam brought this up at the last meeting, and Adam's very good about asking, do we have an agenda? And we could have an agenda. We could have an agenda for, you know, for meetings. But for that to happen, y'all need to organize. So I'm asking you to help in that effort. In terms of you know, putting together an agenda, I am pretty fully tapped right now. And so, you know, I can ask, you know, I can send a message out to the list and say, what do you guys want to talk about at the next meeting or the meeting further out beyond that? But it would be great if you guys could think about what you want to talk about. If you have something that you want to bring and do a show and tell with, you know, raise your hand in advance and say at an upcoming meeting, and just like send it to the general email list. Don't send it to me directly, but send it to the general email list, and say, you know, I want to talk about this, or I'm curious about this other thing, and maybe, you know, maybe some folks can step up and say, yeah, I would be happy to answer or talk about, you know, this given topic, because you guys know so much stuff, and I don't think you realize how much you know, and it just would take somebody asking the right question for you to go, oh yeah, I can definitely answer questions about that.
You know, a subject, and I've brought this up before, but it's never really happened, is like, I would like to hear maybe someone talk like for half an hour about their user experience, like from the day they got their computer, like in 1981, or when they got it in 1991 or whatever, their first Timex or Sinclair, and just talk about what they did with it for a while, because I didn't grow up with one. I had other systems, and in a lot of ways, like, especially if you had an 81, you were like, your hands were like tied together. And I know that, like, from looking through newsletters now and the magazines, people were able to do great things with these machines, which I think are, especially the 81 with those simple graphics. And, you know, it's now we have the high-res graphics that are being used, and that's incredible to me. But people like made this Galaxian game, you know, in 20 lines of code. And is it simple? Of course. Is it pretty cool that some person who just was playing around and probably didn't know programming came up with some Galaxian game? And you know, I would like to hear from people on what they programmed, or maybe they didn't know how to program and they just loaded games or loaded their, what was the three things that came? Well, that was with the, I was going to say the tape that came with the with logo and with the 2068. Well, not logo, Turtle Graphics, but there was never a tape that came with the 1000, was there?
No, but the 1500 did. Yeah,
it did. Okay.
Yeah, but
I
I'm
find
totally
that
with you,
interesting.
Adam. That's one of the things that I love, is hearing, you know, hearing people's origin stories is what I call
Oh, that's a good name.
You know, and actually there were some newsletters that, you know, they would do this. They would, you know, have somebody write up their little history, and it appeared in that newsletter. I think it was the newsletter that's out of Vancouver area that had a bunch of those. But yeah, I love hearing those stories.
Yeah, we I guess we can organize it in some way. Like when you say we should organize something, what do you mean by that?
Oh, well, it'll be great if someone would take on,
Not me, you mean?
if someone would take on the herding required to make an agenda, the herding and the cajoling and the pulling of fingernails.
Well, I think one of the issues is people are embarrassed to talk sometimes, because this is like there's people on this meeting right now who haven't said a word, and which is fine, and I understand it, but I think it can be people shouldn't be afraid to step forward, and like don't be like me and just start talking when someone's talking, but maybe say something in the chat and say, hey, would you mind if I step forward or something, and did something like that, because it's fine to talk in these meetings. That's what they're for.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I every time I start one of these things, just before we start, I think, this is not my meeting. This is your meeting. I'm just paying the bill to make it possible. So I'm just making it possible for all of us to get together and hang out and have a good time, twice a month. But really, 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 this is your thing. I'm happy to facilitate. I'm happy to, sit here and press the record button, but please take over.
Okay, Joe, next time it's your meeting.
I hope to contribute myself with some troubleshooting guides of, how to get one working, because I have a broken one and don't really know a whole lot about how to use it. I played some games back in the day, but I really don't think I did much else, and I'm not even sure how I made that work. So yeah, I've been kind of looking through some articles and stuff, and got some ideas of maybe where to start, but definitely have a lot of questions on, I'm not an electronics troubleshooting engineer, so kind of working my way through that. I hope to provide and kind of make a nice guide that would maybe help somebody else in the same position.
Oh,
like a beginner's guide, you mean? Like a
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I bought a broken Timex Sinclair 2068. What do I do? And just kind of basic steps of
besides
looking
throwing
at
it away, like which would happen. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, ship it to me, and I'll take some time to figure it out. But yeah, and of course, I hope to lean on experience of people who've actually troubleshot and fixed these things. Point me in the right direction as I kind of create some of this documentation or guides.
Yeah. Adam, you mentioned what I call origin stories, but I'm going to call out Paul for a second here. There are those of us who still like to do interesting things with our computers, and Paul DeMelto and I have chatted a bunch through email. We've had some individual Zoom sessions, and he likes to use old computers to make music now. And there's a lot of challenges with that. I mean, you can, there's a Z Expand that has the AY chip on it. And so in theory, you could make music with a 1000, but there's some big hurdles. And I, without speaking too much for Paul, I know that that's part of the interest for him, is using this old stuff to do that new stuff. So keep it in mind.
Well, I actually like that idea quite a bit, because the demo scene, in Europe, that really never made it across the pond, I guess, that they were all about doing that kind of thing and having flashy graphics, and it's not something that seemed to have caught on here, even now.
Paul, I saw your mic come on. Do you want to speak?
Oh, I was just saying, I've had a lot of fits and starts in getting started. I'm still actually working on my 1000 situation, but once I get things going a little bit more smoothly, I'd be happy to talk about it in the future.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I'm actually in 1000 for other stuff with the original printer for various reasons too. So, there's that also.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys will be really fascinated to hear what Paul's doing without overselling Paul.
Well, we have like 5 minutes left. When is our next meeting?
Right. So our next meeting is the first Monday of the month, which happens to be the 7th of October. So that's looks like it's about 1, 2, 3 weeks away. And that'll be at 9 p.m. as usual because it's Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I will endeavor to send out at least 2 reminders, one probably a week before, and the other one a little closer to the meeting itself.
I wanted to ask, I'm glad I just remembered since you mentioned the date. During that time period is the Balloon Fiesta. If there's anyone who's going to be out here for the Balloon Fiesta, because people come from all over the world to see it, let me know.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, I think we have slid into home.
All right. It was nice to hang out with everyone. And Ingo, thank you for that talk, and Michael too. It was awesome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. It was fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.